afternoon. At the tone, Pacific Daylight Time will be 5, 4, and 30 seconds.
What? Oh my God, we're having an earthquake. Wait a minute. Hold on. Can you feel that? Yes, I sure can. Okay, this is interesting. There go the lights. Oh.
We are here at the Scotts Valley Library. It is the 18th of September, 2019. We are here with Diane Cohan and Gloria Simpson, here to talk about the 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake. Thank you both for being here.
Sure.
Would you like to start by telling me how long you've been in Santa Cruz?
Well, I was born at Sisters Hospital on Westcliff Drive in 1945, but I moved to a ranch in Los Altos, grew up in Los Altos, came back in 1967 to go to UCSC, and I've been here ever since. I stayed and I caused a lot of trouble.
And you?
I've been here 32 years. I moved here from Southern California.
Oh, okay. Would you like to tell me what you were doing before, during, and after the earthquake?
Well, I had just left county mental health in my Volkswagen convertible, and I'm driving down the street headed home, and bam, 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 the car's bouncing all over, and I went, oh no, I have a flat tire. And then I got out and I looked at the tires, and then everything started shaking. So I just got back in the car and went home, and all heck was breaking loose there in my neighborhood, and I had to go. I actually went and took care of other people before I even went down my long driveway to see what was happening at my house. So that was my first experience. I just left county mental health and was heading home.
Where did you live at the time?
I lived on Tanner Heights, a hilltop right above Santa Cruz. I was there for 50 years and moved here recently. Yeah, everything was askew, including my next door neighbor's big, beautiful house that actually almost came down. I had to go in and drag her dog out of the shower. Yeah, I'm an animal person, so that was easy. Yeah. What were you doing? She's got the best story. Gloria has the very best story. You're going to love this.
Well, me and I think 11 other women that day who had babies on the day of the earthquake. So on October 17th, I went to community hospital. I was induced. My daughter was about a week late, and they decided it was time to do it. So she was born at about 2:30 in the afternoon. And as you know, the earthquake happened at 5:04. They had just taken her away from me when the shaking started. I just remember sitting there thinking, don't let that TV fall on me. The nurses came flying out of the nursery within minutes. I got to the door, and
You got up
had
and
babies.
walked.
Yeah, had babies in isolates, and kind of rolled one up to me and said, here, take care of your baby. And I looked at it, oh yeah, that one's mine. It's good they brought me the right baby.
Yeah, well, you would have taken care of anybody. I know you.
But it was an interesting night to spend at the hospital. My older daughter was there too, and there were all the aftershocks. They had generators going, so we had power and we had food and we had all the things we needed. They brought all the people from upstairs, downstairs. All the windows broke up there, so there were people just everywhere. All the rooms were full of people, all the hallways. And I just remember sitting in a rocking chair, kind of watching CNN, watching the
San Francisco.
the disaster, watching cars in the
bridges,
what was happening, and kind of rocking this brand new baby and going, oh, aren't you wonderful? Oh, isn't that awful?
She's such a good mom. She's a wonderful mother.
So that's what I did that day. And a year after that, we worked for Project Cope, which was a counseling program, and we became acquainted with the other women that had had babies that day. And we had a birthday party the year after because, there was no celebration. There was, it was just disaster all around you. There was no power there. I didn't come home to flowers and all kinds of wonderful stuff. It was, the chimneys were down and the kitchen was a disaster, and, my family was there cleaning it up. And one of the interesting things about my house, though, is that we did get power pretty quickly.
Did you?
And so my ex-brother-in-law was the bureau chief for the San Jose Mercury News. And so he was kind of operating out of that house. Oh, so wow. The phone was ringing. Ted Koppel was calling. People were calling from all over the country.
Oh, how fun. I didn't know that.
Interviewing Lee. Yeah, so
cool.
They interviewed him. And my family, of course, was watching it from the East Coast, listening to him saying, say something about the baby. Of course, he never did. So.
On what, international news? Oh, there's
yeah.
a new baby?
Yeah, there's a new
That's
baby
funny.
in the family.
So you both worked on something called Project Cope.
Yep.
Would you talk about how that works and what it's like, what it was like to do Project Cope after the earthquake?
Well, that's a huge topic. I had just finished all my clinical rotations actually at County Mental Health and was like, when I was driving down the street in my bouncing car, I was pretty much done with that for a while. And then I got a call and said, would you please come back and participate in earthquake recovery? And of course I said, of course I will. I also have a whole other gig, a whole other profession on the side, but I could do whatever I wanted because I work for a wonderful woman. I work for me. So I said yes, and it was a little bit later that you came along. We hired her.
I think Annie was about 4 months.
Yeah.
I came on board. I got a call, I think, from Viola Ewell or Peter Spofford, who were running the program.
Yeah.
And they asked me if I would come and work for them at first. I said, no, I don't want to. And finally they said, well, how many hours a week do you want to work? And I said, well, how about I start at 10? And they said, okay, we'll take it. They really were trying to pull
They really
together.
wanted you because you're so good.
Well, they wanted to pull together people that had experience with trauma. We had a great trainer there too. We had Diane Myers.
She was wonderful.
We had, she was on loan, I think, from FEMA. FEMA sent her in.
And paid for her?
Yeah, and we had Bruce Hiley Young, who was from the VA. So we had a lot of trauma experts that were working with us and training us. And we were doing individual work with people, groups. We were going into the schools. We were going into businesses. Didn't you and I go to Watsonville one day to work with the people in the park?
I believe we did.
There was a group of people that they were trying to get back in their houses.
I did house calls.
Mm-hmm.
I did house calls.
Yeah, we were all over the county assisting people, and I often went with Annie, my baby, little carrier, into the house, and she visited a lot of children that had been impacted and their families. So,
Can you give me an idea of what Project Cope does? What their mission is? What kind of work? Obviously, it's trauma.
Well, of course, it closed down a year and a half afterward because it was FEMA funded. It was a short spurt of money and energy, and it was wonderful. It's one of my favorite parts of my career.
Yeah, it went on for about 2 years for Project Cope.
And I thought I had more stuff. I have the wonderful pictures, which I do want to share with you.
Yeah.
This is just a manual about working in the schools.
Yeah.
We had a wonderful woman named Connie who was a semi-retired teacher in the East Bay, and Connie pretty much wrote all of this. I think she had everything to do with working with, and we went into the schools. Did you? I don't know if you did school stuff. Yeah, you did.
I went
Sure
into
you
schools
did.
with Connie Grimes, and Colleen Kibert was our art therapist.
Oh, she is wonderful. Colleen Kibert, she's a local treasure. Is she still around? I don't know.
Oh.
But she taught us, she had all these wonderful exercises about how to manifest your earthquake feelings into a drawing, but there was like a protocol about how to do it to get you to start out a little bit relaxed and easy, and then you get down to the terror part. She was magic. She's well known. She's a fabulous artist. We just had the best people. Yeah. We just did. That FEMA money was great.
And I think even afterwards, like I was telling Diane, I actually ran into somebody a couple of nights ago. I work in the emergency room at the hospital. It was someone that I worked with back then, 32 years ago, a mom and her daughter, and just brought us all back together. She also had a baby that day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we kind of caught up and talked about what those kids were doing and what that was like for all of us. And it was very scary. It was a time that I think people, because of the time of day that it happened, working with kids, a lot of kids were alone. Their parents weren't quite home from work yet. So all the kids that might have been after school or at their sports events or after school activities were without their moms and dads. And neighborhoods really came together, and people really looked after each other. And it was pretty terrifying for a lot of kids.
My daughter was at volleyball practice at Harbor High, so I knew she'd be okay. I knew there was supervision. Her name, by the way, is Jennifer, and as are most teenagers. Anyway, I don't know where was our imagination. I don't know, but anyway, I knew Jenny was going to be okay. So, and later on, I heard from her, "Well, why didn't you come get me?"
I'll never forget Jenny's story about what happened in that gym. Do you remember?
Tell me, I forget.
She told me, well, the lights went off. It got completely black and dark. They were
This
having
is Harbor
volleyball
High
practice.
gym.
And she said, every volleyball, every badminton birdie, everything that got stuck up in the rafters over the years came down on them. So all this stuff was falling on them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, the trauma.
Scary.
Oh, the
Yeah, she said it was like stuff was hitting you.
They're gonna kill us. Oh, yeah. So Jen and I didn't. She went home with another family, and we caught up later. But I was pretty busy with animals and my neighbors, and all the couldn't open the front door. It was like, what happened to my house? Crazy times.
Yeah. So do you have any stories that you'd like to share that came out of Project Cope? Can you share any of them?
Without using names, I think we can. I think some of the children that we work with in the schools were very compelling. We met with I don't know how many hundreds of kids. We went into many different schools, many different classrooms, and I think it was very healing for them because there was a process that went on where we were drawing. You first learn to draw. You make lines, so kids did lines, and then you learn how to do squiggles. So Colleen taught us how to walk them through this process of showing drawings, eventually getting to the place where when I say earthquake, it can be lines, it can be squiggles, it can be a drawing of what you remember from that day. Mm-hmm. And Diane has some of those. I don't know if we can hold some of those up.
Please do.
Well, I think
look at
some
them.
of these are magnificent. I think some of them probably came from the art. Mm-hmm. See their prizes on here. I have a little story. Another clinician and I went to an elementary school.
Oh, here's it. I don't know if you can see the little kid under the table there.
These are just fabulous.
There's that one.
This is one about readiness. All the stuff that you need for.
Get ready for the big one.
We should take this to the CERT trainings.
Yeah. There you go.
The artwork is just magnificent. Did I say the thing about Bruce and me? No. About our group?
No.
No?
No, say it.
Okay. Another clinician and I, the fellow from the VA and I went into one of our elementary schools to work with children who had been specifically chosen by their teachers and counselors as young people who could use some attention. And we got in there and I thought we were just going to talk about the earthquake, and I had my bunny puppets, so we're going to talk about the earthquake. Well, that lasted for about a minute and a half because one of the children, as we were getting ready to do this ridiculous bunny thing, blurted out about some horrible family conflict that had happened in their house the night before. And it was very clear to us that, bless these teachers and counselors, they just wanted some helpers in that school. They just wanted some people to come and hear what the kids had to say.
Did you see this one?
Oh, that's horrible.
But it was very healing for these kids to have an opportunity to sit and draw these. And they had like about...
Oh, that's beautiful.
They had about 6 counselors in the room. And so we had a lot of...
We won't be showing this one.
We had a lot of discussion and a lot of healing with them afterwards.
Art is a wonderful thing. Oh, here's somebody who's out there on his skateboard.
Oh, yep.
Doing the thing, and the buildings are all askew. People are looking out the window. This was so much fun. So this was your project down at Loudon Nelson, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Isn't that what
we did this, and then we did a picture contest too, where people brought in their photographs.
This is from a little girl in Aptos.
Beat the quake.
Beat the quake. We just had carte blanche to be as creative as we wanted. That money just came, and I would have done it without, no one needed to pay me to do this. I mean, the experience was precious. It was just precious. So that is what I think has made us so aware of how important it is to be prepared and to talk about these things. And so I do CERT and I do all that other stuff. I've been jumped right into all of that and have all the preparedness and stuff at home and talk about it at my neighborhood all the time because you never know.
Yeah.
You never know.
So both of you, having come from California, had you been in earthquakes prior to Loma Prieta?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't alarming to me, but I think anyone who'd never experienced one. What was the one you were telling me at lunch about somebody who had an earthquake? Oh, well, we talked about so many things.
We're losing our minds.
My age is catching up with me.
So you knew that it was a pretty significant earthquake.
Well,
When it was happening,
I thought it was a flat tire, so what did I know? I thought it was a flat tire.
I knew it was, and I, was sitting in the hospital, and I could see out the window. I right away could see smoke. No, I could see that there were fires. I could see ambulances were coming into the hospital. A helicopter landed nearby. There was just a lot of activity, and I have some very interesting footage too. One of my friends picked up my movie camera, which was in the room, and walked out and took pictures in the emergency room, and then he walked downtown. He went across the bridge, so you could see all the damage that was before they blocked it all off. It was in the
Gloria,
early
I didn't
moments.
know about that. Do you still have that?
Yeah,
I would love to see
Jim
that.
Needham took
I would
some
love to
pictures.
see that.
Yeah. It follows on my home movies after everybody's, here's the baby,
This
and the next
wonderful
thing you know,
baby,
there's-
then bam.
and then it's like bam, and here's all this kind
crazy.
of chaos. So
You should send that to Hollywood.
yeah. We'll have to ask Jim.
Why not?
Pay for
I actually
that
have to get
baby.
permission.
Pay for that baby.
Yeah. So it was interesting to be in a neighborhood. Neighborhoods really came together. I know in my neighborhood, everybody was helping each other. Both my chimneys were down. There was lots of breakage. There was lots of patios that were buckled and, not uncommon for other people. Other people's whole houses had come off the foundations. It was pretty significant in a neighborhood with older houses in it. So
Where did you live at the time?
near Shoppers Corner, so right in Santa Cruz. Yeah, these big glass windows in the back, and the first thing I thought of was, oh no. But they stayed. Windows stayed. All the masonry was what, went down.
I had a big crack in one of my lower front walls under a big picture window, and I knew they were coming out to inspect, so I took some Fix-All and I filled it up and painted over it because I didn't want to be red tap.
Yeah.
So come and get it. Yeah, I had other things on my mind. I didn't need to deal with bureaucracy as well.
Sure.
And
I'm a heretic.
I actually had a nanny that came and took care of Annie when I went back to work.
That's right.
Moved here from Sweden.
That's right.
And that really terrified her because she had never been in anything like that before. She was working for another family somewhere and decided to not do that anymore. She was very scared. And then we had, about 6 months after that earthquake, I think, we had a swarm again. We had some small earthquakes that were kind of in a row. They could have been aftershocks, but that sent her back to Sweden. She was like, done, like, enough of this.
Enough of this crazy California.
Yeah,
Oh my goodness.
pretty frightening. It was a big earthquake. There was a lot of damage.
So having worked in mental health services, did either of you notice an overall shift in public consciousness, or could you tell that there was like a community-wide trauma, or what were your perceptions working in the mental health fields before and after the quake?
Well, I think everybody had a story, and it didn't really matter where you were, if you were working in mental health or talking to the checker at the grocery store. If you said to somebody, where were you when the quake happened, you better sit down, because everybody had a story and they needed to tell the story, and it was a long story about where they were. And
in our culture, people don't really spend a lot of time listening. Lots of people like to talk. I remember hanging on the fence in front of the big building that went down, that they decided to take down. What was the name of the one where all that fun stuff happened and the music was in the front?
the Cooper House.
The Cooper House, duh. The Cooper House. When that came down, I remember we were all hanging on the fences. I mean, I was just sobbing. I loved the Cooper House. The whole town was in mourning about the Cooper House coming down, and it did. I don't think it needed to either, by the way. But that's just me. I think that was somebody's business decision rather than a respect for the community. That was sad.
But I think it did change people's awareness, and people think about, what could happen. People are a little more active on our Earthquake Preparedness Month, which is in April. Everybody,
I'm sure it had something to do with some building codes too.
yeah,
I'm sure that everything was more structurally
yeah.
sturdy, I would hope. I don't know.
You know, coming from Southern California, I have my older daughter who was a teenager when the earthquake happened. In the schools down there, one of the first things you do on day one is you put together your earthquake kit. A big baggie, and they tell you what you need to put in there for them. And so they have water, and they have granola bars, and they have things that they keep in their cupboards. So they were preparing long before we were.
Yeah.
So they certainly have had some major earthquakes down there.
So earlier you mentioned having done CERT training and being generally prepared for natural disasters. Did that stem from the earthquake, or was that something that you practiced before?
It probably came from living on a hilltop and running a ranch and being aware of. I do something else for a living too, that I spent a lot of time. I had an office in the jail, and I just know that the world can be a dangerous place. And I worked for the court system for years, and came upon some people who were not nice, and so I've always had kind of an awareness of my surroundings and where I am and what I might need to do if things were to go awry. Earthquake was the least of my concerns, actually, on many occasions. But that was then, this is now. Yeah.
And we both have worked in the area of trauma and response for law enforcement and fire and other different groups. So I think a lot of it grew out of our training, for me anyway, with Project Cope.
For sure,
Working with,
for sure.
Diane Myers was
she was a treasure.
Incredible mentor. And
Did you only work with kids for Project Cope?
I did some house visits. I'm very adventurous and afraid of nothing, so it's kind of stupid too. So I would go do house visits even in wrecked situations. And I remember meeting a lovely older man out there at his home. That's where he wanted to talk, and he was sort of embarrassed about feeling so bereft and sad about his they like to sit in those big chairs, a big chair. He had this big man chair, what would you call it, a recliner, I'm sorry. So he's had this big recliner next to the fireplace, and the fireplace came down, and his chair saved his life. Because the chair was big, this great big chair and this big man, and the fireplace came down around him and behind him, and the chair saved his life. And he started to cry when he was telling me about this, because people who thought they were being helpful went into the house and took the chair away, and he was minimizing that. And I said, of course you're upset about that. Can we go to the dump and find it? It was just sort of emblematic of everybody's personal memories and reactions. But yeah, the chair saved his life. And somebody came and hauled it away. So that was a sweet moment. There were lots of very sweet moments, just being with people and when they're fragile and unguarded, and feel safe to say what they need to say to clear the air and let go of some of that pain. I think that's what we do. Is that what we do? That's part of the job description.
Yeah,
It seems that way.
and we did work with a lot of adults too. There are many people that were impacted by that.
It was a privilege. I loved every minute of it. Like I said, I would have done it for free. But we didn't have to. Thank you, FEMA. Thank you, FEMA.
And we had such a good team of people to work with.
Yeah, we have
I can't remember everybody's name. There was probably 20 people.
And we took on contract therapists. We brought some other folks in because there was money. So it was a pretty big group. Some of the really best people, I thought. Yeah, it was quite a time.
What's it like to reflect on your experience 30 years later?
Oh, I don't know. Well, I feel enormously proud of what we did. So, and the being reminded and you look at this stuff and anything that promotes honest, an honest reaction to something horrible that can lead to healing, rather than just, it's okay, you're okay, which I see a lot going on in our culture, because there's so much to be upset about. But I won't get political, I promise. Yeah, I would if I could, but I won't. Never mind, you're off the hook.
Well, that's one of the really wonderful things about it, is we were able to go into places that people normally wouldn't go, perhaps. That we had the flexibility to set up things the way we wanted to do it. And I remember going to Watsonville. You speak a little Spanish, I speak, hi, how are you? And we probably weren't the best people to send into a community that, primarily speaks Spanish, especially the people that were in the park that day, to talk to them about that it's safe to go back to your homes now, that it's okay.
They didn't want to believe it. They didn't believe it, understandably.
Yeah. Well, some of them had actually been in an earthquake in Mexico City that was just devastating. A huge and horrible earthquake too. So trauma on top of trauma for many people. So it was hard to convince them. So
I think my biggest win down in Watsonville was explaining that don't keep feeding these people hot dogs, get them some damn tacos. Get them some culturally appropriate food, because they were, what's this, that's just kind of how I am, I'm sorry. But they were, they really needed the comfort of their own.
Yeah.
And that did work out. We got that going. We were at the fairgrounds, weren't we? We were at the fairgrounds.
Yeah, we're at the fairgrounds.
Some of this stuff all blends together. There's been so much, but yeah. Yo hablo como una blanquita. I talk like a little white kid. You understand? Well, I grew up on a ranch in Mountain View, and all my little compadres were the workers' kids, so, and it's such a privilege. Yo soy de la gente. Yeah.
I wouldn't think that hot dogs were comfort food.
Oh God, no. Garbage.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you would like to cover that we haven't talked about yet? Carte blanche.
It was just a privilege. It was a privilege to work with wonderful people. And Diane Myers and Colleen Kibert. I mean, we just had these fabulous people.
Sue Brandy was working
Sue Brandy,
with
people
us.
to expand on our already. I wasn't even licensed at the time. I was still going through my psychotherapy license stuff. I had another license. I was doing something else, but it was life-changing for me. I think you too, a little bit. She's been licensed much longer than I have.
Yeah.
So you said you still work in trauma therapy. And
I have a private practice, and then I work at Dominican Hospital in the emergency room. So.
And do you still do trauma work as well?
Well, I've been taking care of law enforcement for years and years, and I'm retiring. I don't even want to. I don't know. I'm so ambivalent. I'm ambivalent because I love what I do, but I think it's time, there's other wonderful people who do this work, and I think it's time to not have the phone go off at 3:00 in the morning. Yeah. I don't know. What will I do with myself?
Oh, I think you'll figure that out.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know. Let's get in trouble doing so.
But I think a lot more training has come out. Oh, there's a lot more focus on what people's needs are. And, we had emergency responders that day too.
Oh, yes.
It's interesting to look at the pictures 30 years later. I have the book, and I had it out the other day, and I thought, oh, there's so-and-so, and there's so-and-so, and there's, the police and fire were down there, as well as, hundreds of, citizens out there that all came in to try to save the people that were in the collapsed building. So, but there were people injured all over the place, that's for sure. There were pieces of furniture that fell on people. Some of the drawings that kids did were about, things falling so they couldn't get out the door. There were some really interesting drawings of things like that.
And the corollaries to 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
When 9/11 happened, I just kind of that's where I went in my head. That I have some sense of how monstrous that must have been for everybody, and continues to be, actually. Yeah. Heartbreaking. Yeah. Thanks for asking us.
Of course.
We hope we were interesting.
Oh, I thought so. I appreciate you sharing your story as well. I think, you mentioned that everyone has a story, and you better be prepared to sit down and listen to it. And that's exactly what we're doing here. You know, everyone's story matters. Everyone's story is important, and we want to get at that very quintessential Santa Cruz experience. It's just such a big part of the identity of Santa Cruz.
Yeah.
So that's the meat that we're trying to get at.